This is the JGMaker Magic 3D printer, which happens to be a bare bones budget printer. So I'm going to go through it, get it all set up, and see if it's worth your time and money, or if you should go with something else. So let's get started. As you can see, this box has been beat up pretty good, and not the worst I've seen, but I hope the packaging inside is keeping everything safe. So a little background on this printer as I get it opened up. JGMaker sent this to me free of charge. I wanted to check it out, seeing that the retail price on this printer is $149. And over the last couple weeks, I've seen it for as low as $109. So I had to see what you're actually getting for this price point, because that's very cheap for a 3D printer. But with all that said, it looks like everything was packed in here pretty nice, and here's the bag of all the parts. So let's go over that real quick. So there's a quick start guide in different languages, a warranty booklet, a USB cable, a small amount of PLA filament, a replacement part for the extruder, a micro switch for the Z-in stop, some clippers that come with just about every 3D printer, the filament runout sensor, this odd little scraper to help you get your prints off the bed, all of the bolts needed to put this printer together, some spare parts and a replacement nozzle, a tooth belt, all the tools that you would need to assemble this, and the last thing in the package is a USB to SD adapter with an 8 gig SD card. And now let me get the rest of the larger pieces of the printer out. So we have a spool holder that is all just bent sheet metal, it looks like. Next up is the X-axis. It already has the Bowden extruder installed along with the idler pulley for the belt that's going to move our printhead. It looks like they're using plastic gears instead of metal ones, and this must be to keep the price point down. And it looks like most of the parts of the extruder are all plastic as well. As for the printhead, it looks like it's folded sheet metal with some V-slot rollers on the back, with what looks like a Creality knockoff heat break, and a built-in Z-limit switch. It does look like everything nicely goes into this integrated circuit board, and then comes straight out the top, which keeps all the wiring pretty clean. Next up are all the pieces for the Z-axis. And last but not least is the base and the rest of the printer. And the base of this is completely made of sheet metal. But one kind of odd thing is the bottom is completely open with no cover of any of the electronics. And it's still a little amazing to me how little actually runs the 3D printer. And here's our main board, and as you can see, it is pretty bare bones, and it basically just does the bare minimum to make this a 3D printer. So no expansions or anything like that on here. But they did use ferrules where the power supply connects to the motherboard, which a lot of companies don't do. And I'm honestly surprised to see it here, but it's a welcome surprise. So when I was flipping this over, I did hear some rattling, and there's only one place the rattling can come from, and it's behind this little protective shroud to the power supply. And it sounds like there's a screw or something in here, so I'm going to take this off and see what's going on. So if it is something metallic that's in there and it touches one of the leads, it could damage your machine or catch fire, so I'm going to check that out to be sure. So it looks like a binder clip somehow from the bed. And yeah, that would be very dangerous to be in there, especially if it was touching any of the leads in there and I turned it on. And after flipping the printer back over, I can see that it's missing one of the binder clips. But I don't see any way that it could have got in there from the top or anywhere really. So I don't know if it got put together with it in there or not, because there's no through holes on the top area. And if you go back to when I was unboxing this, you can see that there is a missing binder clip. And I honestly didn't even notice that it was gone until I found this inside of the machine. But anyways, let's keep going and get this thing set up. So I'm just going to cut free some wires that are on the side here. And while doing this, I noticed the wires to the bed were soldered on the side of it instead of on the back. But it looks like they put in a decent strain relief here, so it doesn't look like they move at all. So they shouldn't break. There is a plastic film protector on the front that you need to take off, and to get it all the way off, you have to remove the knob, which just pulls right off. So the build service that comes with this will work for you, but sometimes materials stick a little too well to this kind, and I like to use the textured glass build plates. And you could just order one that's made for the Ender 3 and it'll fit this machine perfectly. You just need a little bit thicker binder clips to fit it on. But for the initial setup and first couple prints, I'm not going to change anything on this machine to see how well it actually does on its own. This printer doesn't come with printed instructions, but you can find a PDF on the SD card that comes with it. But if you've ever assembled a 3D printer before, you might not need the instructions, seeing that this is a very simple setup. But I did run into another problem. The belt that is supplied with this is not the right size and is too short. So with it installed, there's no way to fit the bearing that goes on this side to put tension on it. So to fix this problem and to make the belt a little bit longer, I'm just going to cut off these zip ties and readjust the end, and then add a new zip tie to it. It's really not that hard of a fix, but it's also not a fix that you should be doing with a new printer. This should just come from the factory ready to go with everything at the right length. And so far it seems like quality control is really lacking on this printer. But anyways, I'm going to continue on and continue to assemble everything, and hopefully by the end of this I will end up with a working printer. And it looks like it didn't catch on fire when I turned it on, so that's a good sign. So the first thing I like to do is auto home the entire machine. This will basically tell me that everything is working properly and show me that the end stops are working. And one of the first things I noticed as soon as everything started moving was how loud the machine was, or the stepper motors, seeing that this printer doesn't have silent stepper drivers. And when homing the Z-axis, the part cooling fan kind of collided with the bed a bit, which is fine. It just means I need to adjust where the Z height end stop is, along with adjusting the little knobs on the bed. It does have a assisted bed leveling setup in it, which is kind of nice. It'll move to 5 different points on the bed, and you can adjust the knobs on the bottom so everything becomes level. So let me pop in the supplied SD card and print the test file. And this took about half an hour to print using the PLA that came with the printer. But it looks like I was a little too close to the bed, and this is completely stuck to the build plate. That's another reason why I don't like this build surface. So I grabbed the supplied scraper that came with this and found out it already has a crack in it, which is not great, but it'll still work. But anyways, here's our piece, and it looks like it's completely fused to the raft that it was printed on. So I'm going to try some pliers to pull it off. And that didn't really work too well either. I'm not going to waste too much time on this piece, seeing it's just a test print. So let's look at the print quality. It looks like it has some over extrusion in the circle area, and it was really squished on the bottom end of the square. I don't know if it's from being too close, or if there's something going on with the Z motor. Overall, not the worst print, but also not the best. So I re-leveled the bed, making sure that it was a lot looser on the paper, but it looks like it's still way too close to the print bed when printing. And what I'm printing is in a vase mode or a spiralized mode, so it's only printing one layer all the way around the outside continuously, using some of the build PLA from Matter Hackers. And when printing, there are no settings for baby stepping or moving your Z-axis up or down as the print is going, so you can't really adjust on the fly. But this took about 2 hours to print, and here it is all done. And at first glance it looks like it came out pretty good, but the layer adhesion wasn't great on this, and I'm able to just poke my fingers through it and you can see holes all over the place. And it's so bad that I can just crush it in my hand and it just falls apart. But I don't blame the printer on this one. It might just be my settings where my layers are a little too tall and it's making it so it's really brittle. And like I was saying before, this build surface really doesn't want to let go of the PLA. And I know part of the problem is it's too close to the build plate, but I'm going to move it up again and print another piece and see if it does it still. So this is another vase mode model, so it's only one layer all the way around, and it makes this little interesting looking spaceship in about 2 hours. And this is big enough that I can use the flexible build sheet to get it off. And it looks like it came out pretty much perfect after changing the settings a bit and making the layers a little bit closer together. But even after adjusting the bed again to make it have almost no tension whatsoever on the piece of paper, it's still way too close when it prints, and it makes all of the PLA permanently stuck to the build plate. So I adjusted the bed level again to the point that the paper has no drag on the nozzle whatsoever, and this time for the test print I'm printing a Benchy at a 0.2mm layer height in the same Matter Hackers PLA. As you can see, the print was successful, but it still stuck down really hard, and looking at everything, it was still way too close. But overall, it looks like the Benchy came out pretty good. There is a tiny bit of stringing on the inside, as you can see, along with some noticeable under extrusion on the Z-seam. It looks like the tops of the doors and the windows have a little bit of a cooling problem, seeing that they're a little droopy. But honestly, all of these little print problems can be fixed with some tuning. But altogether, this is a passable print, especially for a printer that just got thrown together, without any tuning or anything like that. I did put the glass bed onto it and printed another Benchy to see if this would fix my sticking problem. And honestly, you can get a glass bed for very cheap, like $16 to $20. And it makes a world of difference for printing and releasing your pieces, because when it cools down, it basically just pops off. And the new Benchy was printed using the same G-code as before, so it has all the same flaws as before. Besides, the bottom you can actually read the text on, because it's not too close. I think that the stock build surface that it came with just might expand with heat a lot more, and makes it a little too close, which I could probably fix by heating everything up and then leveling it, which is suggested to do on some printers and others not. With all that done and some prints done, what do I think of this printer? Well, obviously it does print, and it makes pretty decent prints at that. But it seems like at this price point you get what you pay for, like the lack of quality control and the lower quality parts. And I also don't know how long this printer will actually last for, but every part on this can be replaced with aftermarket pieces, so technically you could just keep it going. But that will depend on you and how much you're willing to tinker with this. Or if you want something that's just going to work out of the box, then I suggest getting something else. But if you're looking for your first printer and you're willing to work through the little problems like I did in this video, or it could have other problems that I didn't have, then the JGMagic might be for you, especially if you don't have much money to put into it. And there are upgrades you could do to this that can fit your needs over time. But I do suggest watching other videos about this printer as well, along with looking at reviews and other printers in its price point, just to get a feel for what you're getting and if it's going to fit with your needs. So I hope this video gave you an idea of what you'd be getting into if you happen to get one of these printers. Like I said, not the worst in the world, but definitely not the best. So if it was helpful, leave a like on this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment. Also, a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters for helping support the channel, and subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified when I put out new videos. I try to post a new video once a week. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.